Hello, wonderful listeners. Today, I'm going to share an amazing story with you, the story of a man who changed the way we use technology forever. Before we begin, let me tell you why this story is so important. Every time you use your iPhone, listen to music on your iPad, or watch a Pixar movie, you're experiencing the incredible vision of Steve Jobs. His journey from a college dropout to becoming one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs is not just inspiring, it's full of valuable lessons about innovation, persistence, and following your dreams. So, make yourself comfortable, and let's travel back in time to discover the remarkable life of Steve Jobs. Our story begins on February 24th, 1955, in San Francisco, California. Steve was adopted as a baby by Paul and Clara Jobs, who promised his biological parents they would send him to university. Little did they know that their son would end up changing the world in his own unique way. As a young boy, Steve was incredibly curious. He loved taking things apart to see how they worked. His father, who was a mechanic, taught him how to make and fix things in their garage. This early exposure to creating and fixing things would later shape Steve's attention to detail and product design. School was often boring for young Steve. He was very clever but didn't enjoy traditional teaching methods. He preferred to learn by doing things his own way. What many people don't know is that Steve was dyslexic. However, he never let this challenge stop him. Instead, he used his different way of thinking to create unique solutions and see things from new angles. In his neighborhood, he met Steve Wozniak, who shared his love for electronics. This friendship would later lead to the creation of Apple computers. But before that success, Jobs faced many challenges. During his early days, he was so poor that he returned Coca-Cola bottles to earn money and walked 7 miles to get one free meal a week at a Hare Krishna temple. After finishing school, Steve went to Reed College, but he dropped out after just one term. However, he didn't stop learning. He started attending classes that interested him, including a calligraphy course. Years later, he said this course inspired him to include beautiful typography in the first Macintosh computer. Now, here comes an exciting part of our story. In 1976, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started Apple Computer in Jobs' garage. Would you believe that the name Apple came after Jobs visited an apple farm during one of his fruit diets? He thought the name sounded fun, spirited, and not intimidating. Speaking of diets, Jobs had quite unusual eating habits. He often ate only one type of food, like carrots or apples, for weeks at a time. Their first computer, the Apple I, was hand-built by Wozniak and sold by Jobs. It was just the beginning of something incredible. Here's something interesting. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, who were often seen as rivals, actually worked together in these early days. Microsoft made software for some of the first Apple computers. The real breakthrough came with the Apple II computer, which brought computers into people's homes for the first time. But Steve wasn't satisfied. He wanted to make computers that were not just useful but beautiful and easy to use. His love for simplicity was greatly influenced by Japanese culture. Jobs practiced Zen Buddhism and often traveled to Japan for inspiration. The simplicity of Japanese design greatly influenced Apple's product designs. This led to the Macintosh in 1984, the first computer with a graphical user interface and a mouse. Jobs had a special talent for negotiation during this time. People said he had a reality distortion field around him, meaning he could convince almost anyone to believe in his vision, even if it seemed impossible at first. However, success didn't always come easily. In 1985, after a disagreement with the Apple board, Steve was forced to leave the company he had created. Many people would have given up, but not Steve. During this time, he started two new companies, Next Computer and Pixar Animation Studios. Pixar went on to create wonderful films like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. Meanwhile, Next developed advanced computer software. In a surprising twist, Apple bought Next in 1997, bringing Steve back to Apple as its leader. What happened next was remarkable. Steve Jobs led Apple to create products that changed our lives. The iPod, which let us carry thousands of songs in our pocket. The iPhone, which revolutionized mobile phones, and the iPad, which created a whole new category of devices. Steve had a special way of thinking about products. He believed they should be simple to use, beautiful to look at, and insanely great. He was famous for his attention to detail and would often ask his teams to revise their work many times until it was perfect. Did you know that he was also a huge fan of the Beatles? He used them as a model for how Apple should work, saying that great business is like great music, it needs both talent and teamwork to succeed. Here's another fascinating detail. Steve Jobs never had a license plate on his Mercedes. He found a legal loophole in California law that allowed him to change his car every 6 months before license plates were required. This meant he could always drive without a plate, but there's another important part of Steve's story. In 2003, he was diagnosed with cancer. Despite his illness, he continued to work and inspire others. His famous speech at Stanford University in 2005, where he told students to stay hungry, stay foolish, has inspired millions of people around the world. Sadly, Steve Jobs passed away on October 5, 2011. His last words were, "Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh wow." Nobody knows exactly what he saw or thought in those final moments, but these mysterious words remind us that even at the end, he maintained his sense of wonder and amazement at life. What can we learn from Steve Jobs' story? First, following your curiosity and interests can lead to amazing things. Second, setbacks and failures don't have to stop you, they can be opportunities to try something new. And finally, to create something truly great, you need to love what you do. Steve Jobs once said, "The only way to do great work is to love what you do." These words continue to inspire people around the world to pursue their passions and create amazing things. Before we end today's story, think about this. Steve Jobs didn't just sell products, he helped create a future where technology makes our lives better and more enjoyable. Every time you swipe your phone or tablet screen, you're experiencing a small part of his dream to make technology human-friendly. Thank you for listening to the story of Steve Jobs, a true pioneer who showed us that with imagination, determination, and hard work, we can change the world. His journey from returning Coca-Cola bottles for money to leading one of the world's most valuable companies shows us that anything is possible with dedication and vision. Remember, dear listeners, whether you want to be an inventor, an entrepreneur, or pursue any other dream, Steve Jobs' story teaches us that anything is possible if you believe in yourself and never stop innovating. Until next time, keep dreaming big and believing in your ability to make a difference in the world.